started this evening. It's nice to see everyone back. As you know, this series is part of our Noyce Scholars Program, and it's brought to us by a Robert Noyce grant from NSF. Tonight we have the fortune of having two speakers come talk to us about a program that they've been working on for about 3 years. It's a three-way collaboration between New York City Public Schools, St. Francis College, and the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy, providing middle school after-school programming around science. Before they tell you about the program, I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. Ms. Marcellin began her career as an analytical chemist with a dual degree in chemistry and lab analysis. But after 7 years, she found a different calling, teaching. She began teaching in 2006 at Brooklyn School for Collaborative Studies in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, working with both 7th and 8th grades teaching science. She now teaches at MS8, another public school located in downtown Brooklyn. And to complement her teaching, Ms. Marcellin is part of the very competitive Urban Advantage program, which provides teachers with professional development and offers students and their families access to 8 science institutions in New York City. Dr. Nolan taught biology at a variety of New York area colleges, including Yeshiva, Columbia, ours, Iota College, and LaGuardia Community College before finding her home at St. Francis College, where she is currently the chair of the biology department, the moderator of the Pre-Health Services Science Club, and advises students on various career paths. She teaches general biology, ecology, genetics, and other topics with research focused on environmental biology and aquatic ecosystems. She's also very interested in laboratory education and is on the board of ABLE, which is the Association of Biology Laboratory Education. She is the Vice President of the Metropolitan Association of College and University Biologists and the President of the Metro New York Chapter of the Association of Women in Science. Please welcome Ms. Marcellin and Dr. Nolan, who are going to talk to us tonight about their after-school program.
Great, thank you very much for that warm welcome. So are you all education majors? No? Can you quickly go around the room? I just want to know what you're all majoring in.
Psychology and economics.
Psychology and economics?
Psychology. Psychology, I'm not sure yet. I'm first year, but probably biology.
Okay. In the back there? You? Or maybe you?
Art history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You?
I'm on the clear whenever I'm interested, yes.
Okay.
Sociology, psychology, architecture.
And how about you?
Oh,
this is our student. She looks so old. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Piano performance.
Pardon me?
Piano performance.
Oh, great.
Sorry, urban studies? American studies. Psychology and math, and I'm minoring in education.
And maybe just one or two of you, if you could just tell me why are you taking this class? You want to tell me? The music person.
Oh, okay. Well, I get to choose one class, either at Columbia or Barnard every semester. I take all my other classes at Juilliard.
Oh, okay.
And so
Yeah.
this happens to be one of the few classes that I can take because it's after 6 p.m. But also, I want to be a teacher in the future. And
Okay.
I want to get my doctorate.
Oh, great. Good. How about you?
I actually know nothing about this subject, so just thought it would be cool to take a class. It doesn't really have to do with anything I'm like immediately interested in.
Very good.
Might as well.
Yeah. Anybody else? Maybe one more person? Volunteer? Yes.
I've always been involved in teaching and mentoring of younger students, and I just want to know more about education issues that face our country today.
Great. Good. Excellent. Good. So just a little bit about myself before we go on and how I met Ms. Marcellin is I was, I still am in charge of this program called the Summer Science Academy, and it's at St. Francis College. And we finished our 15th year this summer. And we usually take 20 to 30 students. One year I had 35. And we do kind of a 2 to 3 week, we've varied, one year it's 2 weeks, another year it's 3 weeks, what we do. And we kind of have a few themes in mind for them. We do nutrition projects with them, and we play the survivor game with them, where they have to pick a nutritious diet over 3 days, and we take them to half of the students over to the health food store and half over to Key Food, and then they have to pick out a diet and put together a presentation by the end of the 3 weeks to try to sell us on their diet. It's kind of a contest. So that's part of what they do. And then we do an environmental focus where we go to local waterways. You can see that the students are kayaking there, and currently we've been working a lot with the Brooklyn Bridge Park because they keep expanding the park, and I can tell you more about that after if you want to know more about it. And they have a lot of recreational activities for students. And other places we've taken them to include the Salt Marsh Nature Center, which is in Brooklyn, and you can seine there. Anybody know what seining is? Yes.
It is when you go into the water, usually in a big suit, big waterproof suit, like boots that are attached to your pants, and you take a big net and you see what you can find. 2 people go, and you can see what you can find in the water, which organisms, fish, little urchins, etc.
Right, crabs sometimes. So that's another activity that is great to do with kids because they don't know what's in the water. And that's kind of an easy way to find out something about what's in the water. So that's another project that we did with them. And then I do take them to museums in the summer, and this is the presentation that they were giving on the last day on their nutrition projects, and then they're judged by, these are high school kids right here, and they're judged by college kids. And this is kind of, I just put this picture in because I thought it was kind of cool. And there's a math museum in town, and it's on 26th Street, and I read about it in the New York Times, and I was kind of embarrassed that I hadn't heard about it before. But they have these really cool, it's very interactive, so you could just go yourself and have fun. And if you want to take a youngster with you, that's probably even better. But you can see that this person's on a tricycle that it has square wheels. And the trick is that for anybody that's into math, the arc of this is exactly equal to the size of the wheel, this distance right here of the wheel, and then it goes around. And I tried it myself. They actually have bigger tricycles too, and it goes around in the circle. And they tell you not to go too fast because they don't want you to be detracked. So that was like one of the activities that we did that was really fun. So that's the Summer Science Academy. And then what happened was we decided to try to expand the program. And we initially got funding from New York State, and through these appropriations that sometimes state senators will give community groups money if you apply for them. And so we got money from them. And then we decided to kind of branch out, and we experimented a little bit. We tried a Saturday morning program. We tried various after-school programs. It was a little hard getting high school kids to be accountable. And somebody told me, well, you have to pay them. And well, I didn't have the money to pay them. And I also, I don't know, I was sort of questioning the ethics of doing that too. So then Kara Gilmore, who is from the Brooklyn Bridge Park, and it's this group that does all this educational programming for the park, and a lot of teachers she deals with, and you can book classes with them. And so she suggested, why don't you ask a middle school, because then the teachers will come with the kids. And we first worked with the Urban Assembly School in Brooklyn. And then what happened was, the teacher couldn't do it the next semester, so you kind of scramble around trying to find some schools that will bring you students. And we now have kind of settled on trying to have 2 schools if we can. And we've reached out to Nicole Marcellin in MS8, and she's been coming for the last 3 years, and she has been our most reliable customer. So that's been like really great. So this is a picture of the group. This was included in another school. We had another middle school, 447, and we also had, we were working with a school called James Booty in Brooklyn. So it's Brooklyn schools, and this is a kind of a new beach that they built in the Brooklyn Bridge Park. So just a little bit, I just told you a little bit about that, and just myself, why am I so interested in middle school and high school education? I did work at St. Luke's School in Greenwich Village for 2 years. This is a while ago that I did this, but I always really thought it was fun working with kids, and the middle school age is a great age, right? Like, it's like they know everything, right? But they know how to read, and that you can really, work with them, and they're very curious, and I don't want to say that they're jaded by high school, but I like working with teaching college too. So and what's great about me is that as I get older, everybody gets younger. So that's what I really like about education. Okay. So, and then you heard a little bit about Nicole Marcellin, and it's fun working with her because she knows the science, because she's worked in it. And it's fun to work with people like that. So we have been doing a 10-week, 10 to 12 week after school program, just 1 day a week. And we've been doing it on Thursdays. And I hope that we can continue to do this. And I just want to tell you, like, well, how do you figure out how to do something like this, right? And we've had things that we didn't really like that we kind of got rid of. And then we kind of have now developed a repertoire of things that now we have a lot of things to do, and we can't do every single thing every semester. So, we will tell you, some of the things that we tried that were kind of fun, where we did this thing called Science in 15 Minutes, where we had college kids, and they did it as part of this service learning requirement. They had to explain to middle school kids, like, some kind of a question, like, for instance, how does a fish breathe? Or how does a whale breathe? And they had to explain it in 15 minutes. And then they were judged by the kids. We had these judging rubrics. So that was kind of fun. We found that was a little hard for the middle school kids because they had to listen to, this kind of the same kind of presentation, like, over and over again. Like, and we figured, what's the maximum number of presentations like that you could do? And I guess we did 4, because you could do 4 in an hour. So we did that. And that was kind of interesting. But we haven't done that for a little while, because what happens is that the people that teach this program, we get a little bored with what we're doing too, or we want to change it up a little bit. So we haven't done that for a while. One semester, we had a lot of field trips. It was like we were constantly going someplace. And it was like, and it would always take longer than you expected to get there, like to the Coney Island Aquarium or something. And we had another middle school that was really anxious to try to do all of these trips. And we didn't really think it worked out that well as we would have liked it to have happened. So now what we do is we do things at St. Francis, and this is one of our labs, and we do things with the students in the labs, and we also take them to the Brooklyn Bridge Park. So that's kind of like how we've settled on what we're going to do for the 10-week program. And what the students are doing here is they're doing a kind of a mock DNA electrophoresis experiment, and everybody's interested in that with CSI and everything. So they melt the agarose, it's called, and then they make their own gels, and then they run the gels, and we actually, instead of DNA, because DNA is a little tricky to try to stain, it's actually, when you work with molecular biology, it looks like you're adding water to water in these little tiny test tubes. You don't really see anything until the end. But we have these dyes that migrate through this gel kind of differentially, and it's like a simulation of DNA. Like like I always tell the kids, if you were to walk through a bowl of Jell-O, a room full of Jell-O, the smaller people would get through faster. So this is a shorter fragment of DNA, and this is a larger fragment of DNA. So that's how you read those gels. What we try to do also is, if something comes up where we think that the students will be enriched by like meeting other people, and also partially because I can't say no, we have these high school students that might come on the same day. So I scheduled these 2 boys to come, and they come all the way from Queens, and they're doing this DNA barcoding project that we just started. And I just hired a new faculty member that does this. And a barcode is like, if you look at a product, it's got a unique code to it, right? So every organism has a unique barcode. So these kids came with us when we go and collect organisms. They came with the middle school kids, and they're collecting snails and algae and all this stuff. See what the DNA barcode is of this. So we just kind of started that project. And the professor I was telling you about has been doing it like for a while. So if anybody is interested in the DNA barcoding project, that's sponsored by Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, excuse me, out on Long Island. So that was something I thought was kind of synergistic, you know, having another group of kids come in. This is this experiment where the students try to figure out what the volume of skulls is and how would you be able to do that. And so what we do is we pour peas, split peas, like into the skull, and then we measure it like in a measuring cup what the volume is. So then the students could look at, we had different kinds of skulls. We had human, chimpanzee, we had monkey skulls. You know, you could use anything to show, I guess what I'm trying to show is how big, you know, the human volume is. Even though the bone structure might be larger on a gorilla, the volume of the human skull is larger. And it's even larger on Cro-Magnon man, which I was kind of surprised at, but it is. So it's kind of interesting. So that's what they're doing there. So we try to keep it as much hands-on as we can with the kids when they come to the school. This is Brooklyn Bridge Park, and can anybody think of where I might have taken that picture? What was I walking over? The Brooklyn Bridge, right? You can see one of the cables right here. And so this is the park right here. And it's really, and anybody know what this is? Governor's Island, right? And that's, and Ms. Marcellin's going to talk about Governor's Island because she took her students out there and I wasn't able to go that day. But we have some collaborations with them also. They have something called the Harbor School, which is really cool. They're really doing great things with their kids. So anyways, the Brooklyn Bridge Park opened officially in 2011. So it's really new and it's really, how many of you have been there? Okay, you all have to go there. It's really, they have everything there. They have roller skating, they have a roller skating rink, they have little restaurants, they have the educational programs I was telling you about. They have a classroom that has big fish tanks in it now and a bicycle path. And it's just really, really pretty. In the summer, they have movies a lot, and they have yoga and Pilates and things like that. So you can go to their website, just type Brooklyn Bridge Park, you know, .org, I believe, and you'll see all the different things that they have. Free kayaking on the weekends. So anyways, so this picture I took a couple of years ago. So they've actually built it up even more since then. Since the park is, people that are interested in city planning might be interested in this. It can't take tax money. It used to be federal, then it was turned over to the state, now it's the city. But this is, I guess, their justification. They have to build things that generate revenue. So they're building some condos, like right adjacent to the park. So you can imagine what those would go for with these kinds of views, right? So they have that, but they also have all this fantastic programming. They have little woodlands, playgrounds. They have a pop-up pool in the summer. So I'm a big fan of the Brooklyn Bridge Park. And St. Francis is one of the closest schools to it, so that's pretty good. So, and then there's the plan of it. You can't really see it that well, but it actually goes from the Brooklyn Bridge. Manhattan Bridge is up here. And anybody ever walk over the Brooklyn Bridge? How about the Manhattan Bridge? Yeah, Manhattan Bridge. And you can ride your bike over it too. And you can take the city bike if you join that and do that. So what was really cool about this is it used to be all like warehouses and old factories, and it was all decrepit, and it was just gross. And now it's really nice. And it's 1.5 miles long, which is like pretty amazing, you know, for a park to be that big. So this is another thing that we do. And they actually have like little beaches there, and the water sort of keeps, and I'm not really exaggerating, it does keep getting cleaner. And part of it's due to that North River Sewage Treatment Plant, which is, I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's right north of here, 145th Street. You should take a gander up there if you've never been up there. And they have like a swimming pool up there, they have ice skating rink, they have all that. But that's really helped to clean the water. And this is the East River where this is. And so the students are doing some water quality testing. You know, they're doing things with beakers and with the water, and they're playing around. And we have these little, they look like calculators, but they're called vernier testers, and you can see the values right on the screen. And so they're pipetting, and you can see we even take them there when it's cold. They don't always like that, but you see there's a little wind thing going there. And this is the next activity that I want to tell you about that I asked you about before, which is the seining. And you can see the kids, and does anybody know what this structure is right here? That's actually the base of the Manhattan Bridge. And what to me is I mean, it's I don't want to say it's sad, but it's kind of a riot in a way, is that the teachers that conduct this seining program, this fishing program, wear it like a loudspeaker because the subways go over. So here you are, you're trying to do this kind of nature thing with the kids, and you got this subway going over, and it's really, really loud. And so, you know, she sometimes even talks through it with her microphone. So there are the kids looking at the literature that they gave us, and she's telling us about the different fish and different things that we're going to see. And those are those big boots that, you know, I was telling you about. They call them waders, and so the kids are going to put those on. Whoops. So there's one, and I like the look on this girl's face, like she looks a little nervous, like you're going to make me go in the water? Like, are you serious? And what's funny about the water is, like, maybe you'll describe what it felt like, but doesn't it feel like you have like this suction like around your legs, and it's a very kind of a strange feeling when you go in the water with them on. And there's your Manhattan Bridge, and there's like a couple pictures of it so you could see it. And then there it is, and there's the beach right underneath it, and there's the kids out in the water seining. So they actually do this. I think Ms. Marcellin is going to have some more pictures to show you of some fish, but here's a pregnant crab. And what's kind of, all those black things are its eggs right here. What's kind of sad about this is that this is actually an invasive Asian shore crab, but the kids learn about invasive species and about, you know, competition, and so they learn quite a bit of biology through this program. Another thing that I was able to do is this requires a little bit of funding because it costs like, I think that it runs me about $900. But I also teach a marine biology class where I take, it's a 2-week course. The college kids get 3 credits. They spend a week in New York, and we do this we do seining sometimes, and we go sailing. And I also take them to the American Museum of Natural History and the New York Aquarium, or sometimes I take them to the Maritime Aquarium in Connecticut. So that's the college kids. And then I also included the middle school kids since I was able to, I have like a little field trip money budget for the college kids. I thought, might as well throw the middle school kids into this. And we did this sailing program, and this is called the Schooner Pioneer. Anybody know where it is? It's out down at the South Street Seaport, okay? And you could go on this boat yourself if you wanted to, like as a private citizen. You just have to kind of Google their website and see when they have their public sales. I don't know, I think it's like $35. It's not cheap, you know. But they have these educational programs, and you can see that the kids are all pulling on something. Well, what they're going to do is they're pulling up the sail. And So I'll come back to that other picture. And so it's really cool. They really actually do this. You know, there's like a couple of, you know, 3 different sails on this thing. And then, you know, the kids on one side pull up the mainsail, and then, you know, you learn some of this nautical terms. I'm not so great with it. But the kids on the starboard side pull up something else. And so then they learn these nautical terms, and they also learn how to read charts. They're not maps, they're called charts, these navigational charts. And they do these things with the kids that they call stations, and they'll have like maybe 3 activities, and especially if you have a big group of students, you break them up into 3 groups, and then you rotate them through the activities. Like in the activities, you could have a choice usually, but I always pick the charts, and then they have like water quality testing. And they do this other one with knots, where they show the kids how to make knots. And there's a couple of other different ones that they do. They do a marine biology one sometimes. If you pay more, they take you out. This is a 90-minute sail. If you pay more, they'll take you out for 3 hours. And you actually take a net. It's called a dragger. And you actually drag the net. And you might get fish and crabs and things like that. And flounder, well, flounder are fish, but just different things. And they put it in like a cooler with an air stone. And if they have taken a sail, let's say I book for the afternoon and they have a morning sail, that might be something we could look at. So that's sort of nice. So it's always, I think, better to book the afternoon sail, because the morning sail might have organisms for you to look at. So then we do things with plants too, and especially now it's kind of fun, you know, this time of year. They might go out and work with a horticulturist and learn how to identify all the trees. And they also might collect some leaves and, you know, learn a little bit about the ecology of the area, learn which plants can withstand salt and which ones can't. And then they look for leaf coloration patterns. Herbivory is when an insect eats the leaf. You know, they might learn about something like that. And then what they'll do is, we have coming up for a lab, we do this photosynthesis lab where the kids they can take leaves, but we also bring in, like you see some carrots there and some peppers, and they grind up the materials, the plant materials. And then we do something called spectrophotometry, and we see where the pigments absorb light. And they make like a little graph from this. So that's kind of a fun little project that they do. And they like the colors, I like the colors. It's a nice project. And then to help, sometimes, I don't think I put that on the schedule for this semester, but sometimes we coordinate with a local park, and then they do some raking and do some park cleanup. And this is at the Cadman Plaza Park, which is right next to St. Francis College. It's like a 2-minute walk. So we did that. We didn't do it this year, but we did it last year. And I don't know if you can see stuff coming out of the pumpkin. Do you see that? This is our chemistry club, and you can see that they made like this foam, and they put it inside the jack-o'-lantern, and they made it come out of the eyes and the nose. And so sometimes the chemistry club will come and do things with the students also. So that's like a fun little bonus for them, I think. There's Miss Marcellin there, stunning picture of her. And so the college kids have to do these poster sessions, not for all of our courses, but for some of them. And this was, I didn't check the title of this one. This one's an analysis of spinach growth and soil versus, that's for my ecology class that we had. And so we have a greenhouse, and the greenhouse is amazing because you have a view of the Statue of Liberty right outside of the greenhouse. And I put up these little Christmas tree lights, and so the students came and they listened to the college kids give their presentations. So they get to ask them questions and get to see what they're doing. So, and this is what I always tell my own students, is that whatever you're doing, try to see if you can match them together, and it just makes it better. Like, you know, see if you can make connections between the different things that you're doing. This is kind of interesting. This is the new building in the Brooklyn Bridge Park. And what's kind of funny about this, I'm walking over the Manhattan Bridge. I took this picture last week. I had to go to Chinatown and get my Did my thing still there? Yeah, I had to get my pork bows, because I really like those, pork buns. And so then I had to work it off. I had to go over the Manhattan Bridge to work off eating those. And then I just thought this was a great view of this building. And this brand new building, it opened up in July. You can't really see, it looks a lot larger, like when you're closer to it. But what was kind of cool about this is that they asked me to go to a public hearing when they were designing this building and building it. And they had already decided they were going to build it because the building was already there. But what they wanted to do is, it was all covered like with ivy and had big fences around it. You wouldn't even know it was there. And so at the public hearing, I had to laugh because people were, they had the plans, and the building kind of came out to a point like this, right? And when you look down at it, it did look like it was bisecting the park. So residents were saying, that looks terrible, you need to get rid of it. And I'm thinking, but you didn't even know it was there before. It was like all covered with ivy. And what I'm thinking is, I heard they wanted to do a classroom in there and also build bathrooms because there were no bathrooms in that little area of the park. That's near where we go seining. So now so what the art people said, like when you're at a public hearing, you tell them what you think, and you have to give them a written statement too of anything that you say. So I just get up and talk, and then I give them my written statement. And it's like maybe a room, maybe twice the size of this, like twice as many people as this. And then the architects listen. Someone said they were an architect, right? And then what they did is, okay, we're just going to cut off the top of this building. So that's what they did. And so because I told you it was a triangle before, right? So they decided, okay, we're going to make the people happy and just cut off a piece of it. So I just thought, wow, that's like amazing. So that's how these things work. That's how these things come about. So if you ever have a chance, go to a public hearing. And it's really interesting. You hear people get all excited and the politics, and it's kind of neat. So what they have in there now is they have a beautiful classroom with all of these, huge fish tanks with all of the local fish that they caught from seining. So that's really amazing that you can actually see that. So I think that's really cool. So I'm coming near the end of my part of the presentation. And I just acknowledge a couple of the schools and Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy, and Noemi Rivera and Marlon Joseph are some teachers that I've had, and Leah Covenant is our lab supervisor. Wendy St. Just was one of my former students that she brought the first group of middle school kids to St. Francis, and D'Angelo Fletcher is one of my students. So thank you very much.
I'm here to talk a little bit about the perspective from the teacher and the students. And I remembered my first year at MS8, we had the opportunity to come to participate in the program. And I didn't have a lot of details about it, but I feel like anything that would engage kids outside the classroom and is science related, yes, I'm all ready for that. So, I joined. We joined the program, and so one of our visits, actually I think this may have been the first group, either the first or this, I think the second, so it's done twice a year, so I think this one might have been the second group for the first time, the first year. It's funny looking at these kids because they're so tiny and cute. Some of them are were in sixth grade when we did it. So we visited the Harbor School. The way I'm doing my presentation is that we're gonna just kind of walk through the experiences that the students had. I just talk a little bit about how much of a value that is for us as teachers. And then I was really lucky to have one of my students who also participated, and she would share a little bit from the perspective of the students, okay? So here our students visited the Harbor School. Many of them did not even know about the Harbor School before. They were able to see like a lot of the programs at the school, and which is like, I think it's an amazing opportunity because the Harbor School is not like one of the other high schools. It's not easily accessible. It's often Governor's Island. And so here they were able, after this, I remember one of the students being so excited about marine science that she wanted to apply to the Harbor School. And so here they're looking at some underwater robotics. the school was also raising oysters, and so here they are they got to look at the tank and kind of look at the insides. It's like a really cool experience for them. Here I think they were doing some water analysis of the water in the Hudson. And so they were also looking at some organisms that were found actually inside of our regular tap water. I think here he was probably just explaining to them like how to use stuff and probably like, I guess, presenting the samples at that point. Another fun thing, as Dr. Nolan talked a little bit about, is seining in the Hudson. So I think this is also like a big highlight. This piece is done by Brooklyn Beach Park. And that's what's awesome about this program, is that we have the experience in the college from Dr. Nolan and her team. And then we have the Brooklyn Bridge Park piece. And, you know, like the kids were really psyched about this. So they got to put on these really cool wetsuits. And here they are gearing up. Actually, we did this last week. This was actually the group from last week's. And then here these students are finding different things as they bring in their nets. And, you know, they're really excited about the things that they find. And they're looking and sharing. And the teacher from Brooklyn Beach Park, she often shares about, like she teaches them about the organisms that they catch. So it's really cool. And this is my group again, another group. This was your year, right? Some more of them. Okay. Then another experience we had with Brooklyn Beach Park and the college, the kids made something called plankton toes. So they had these little bottles and some stockings, and you know, and the nice thing is that you know, as teachers, we do not have a very big budget, and so even if we wanted to do things like this, it's really challenging taking out a class of like 30 kids out into the field to really have these experiences. So what's wonderful is that the park provided all of the materials, and so the kids, the first week, they actually made the toes. The second week, they tossed them into the river, looked for plankton. This is when they were making them. And then we brought it back to the college, and they were able to use the microscopes to actually look at what they may have caught in the bottles. Another awesome experience is learning about the sustainability of the landscape of the park. And a lot of my students live in the neighborhood, but it's fascinating how very little they know about the park. And you know, I think unless you probably really go on the website, you don't get the opportunity to hear about the fascinating things. You know, like even the bleachers that the kids are sitting on is stone that they took from another bridge that was being broken down from somewhere else. All the park benches. There's like a big filtration system underneath the park where all the water is collected. They learn a little bit about the history, but through like really cool hands-on matching games. So they're like switching up all the cards, putting and learning about the history, not like sitting down being bored, like, oh my gosh, this is so boring, but in a really fun and interactive way. Here again, they're having like another lesson. During this lesson, they also get the opportunity to do a little bit of filtration themselves. Because the way the park is designed, the water filters through the landscape and is stored in like really huge tanks beneath the park, and it's actually used during summertime when it's pretty dry, they use it to actually water the park, the areas of the park. So the kids were actually doing a hands-on activity to simulate a similar filtration system. Dr. Nolan shared a little bit about this one. The kids were conducting gel electrophoresis. So I did this in college. I didn't even do this in high school or middle school, so I think it was just really awesome. I guess unless you're doing a program that's focused on genetics or a school that specializes in DNA, you don't really have these opportunities. So, I mean, if you look at them, they're just really excited about learning. They feel really proud, you know, they get in, everybody wants to either put on the goggles, their gloves, and then they're just really psyched to get started. So I think for me as a teacher looking on and supporting throughout the process, I think it's like the excitement that you see in your students, it's priceless. This is them there again. This course that the Brooklyn Bridge, this class, sorry, it is actually a class that you can pay for. So teachers could pay to bring their students to participate in this class, but luckily it's part of the program. And so my kids get to have that wonderful experience. Here they're testing the salinity of water. They actually tossed out some buckets and pulled up some organisms earlier. And so they were looking at different organisms that the park, I just did something wrong. Yeah, sorry. So they were looking at different organisms that they found beneath the park. They're also looking at oysters in the photo on the right. And again, it's just full engagement. I think the class is called A Day in the Life at the Hudson. Here, again, as you can see, so we do have microscopes at my school, but they're really simple, light microscopes. Here they get to use compound microscopes, dissecting microscopes. They get to prepare wet mounts. Dr. Nolan, sometimes, one time you brought in these oysters. And so that's a nice thing, depending on what's going on at the college, the kids, horseshoe crabs, right? The kids get to participate in that experience. So it varies from trimester to trimester, but it's great. They're always like super excited. You're looking at their cheek cells, at hair, strands of hair, and it's just tons of excitement. This is a little bit about the sailing that Dr. Nolan talked about. We've done it, I think we usually do it in the spring because then it overlaps with the summer session. And we go on the schooner Pioneer and we learn a little bit about the history of the boat. And then we learn as we sail, besides actually pulling the sails, we also learn about about different places in the Hudson and the history of some of the buildings around too. And these are my students again. And here they're looking at their charts. You're looking at the organisms in like a sort of a magnifier. So what are the benefits of the programs for us? So I feel like it provides a unique opportunity for students to learn in ways that there's no way I can really offer in a regular classroom setting. You know, they come into class with a lot of excitement, and as Dr. Nolan said earlier, like with middle school students, I feel like, you know, they're really excited. Like they're still like in that elementary school phase where, you know, seeing these unusual things, they're like, wow, and they're, you know, you can really hold their attention, and that's where you kind of have to kind of keep them engaged. And so that program really does that. Students get the opportunity to experience a college environment. So I remember like every time I take my kids through the halls for the first time and they walk through and they're like constantly like looking around and just really fascinated. You know, like looking at all these college kids and they're just looking, they're in awe as they look around the space, looking at the lounges, the cafeteria. They're like, wow, they got cool food here. Oh, there's the swimming pool and everything. They're so fascinated. You walk through the labs, so able to use a state-of-the-art laboratory. You walk in and it's really, you know, it has pretty much really good, where it's microscopes, all the tools, models around. So it provides resources for us. So sometimes if there are things that I'm doing in the classroom and I may need something, Dr. Nolan is always willing to lend it to me. When we have a science fair, they usually loan us a lot of really cool models. So when families come to our science fair, they're able to come and kind of look at things hands-on. We probably make a little like sheet that they can review and try to figure out things about the models. A really big part of this too, I feel like learning about their community, the Brooklyn Beach Park and the estuary, and just like the organisms that live there. I feel like so many of our kids actually live in the neighborhood and don't really know much about it, so it really provides them with a great opportunity to learn about the park. They also participated in college presentations, so I'd have my students like raising hand, like we would sit in a real, like a conference or presentation, and they'll be asking questions of the panelists. I mean, just really cool, and they just feel very proud. At one of those presentations, the students were also interacting with the presenters and asking questions, and it was great for them to see that, like, the scientific method that we're learning in middle school, that the high school students were using those same those aspects of the scientific method in their presentation. So they kind of really see the connection. So it's not just me telling them, oh, you'll use this all of your science life, but they really got to see it in action. I feel like kids go home and they talk about what they did. They come back to school and they're like, the buzz is there. I had a board that I put up with pictures from the program, and the kids were just all very psyched and talking to each other and, like, you know, like really excited to share about the things that they did. And I feel like the big picture thing about this whole program is that the kids are just more excited to do science in the classroom. I feel like sometimes some kids come in and they're like, oh, I don't really like science that much. But I think my goal as a science teacher and as an educator is just constantly, like, how do I keep engaging my students? Like, what are things that I can do to keep holding, like, the wow factor, keep getting them involved? And I feel like this program really does that in, like, so many different ways that to me is priceless. So thank you, Dr. Nolan, for having us be a part of your program. And so my student Zainab is going to share a little bit about her experience in the program. She participated, was it last year?
Last year.
Last year, yes. She's an 8th grader now. So Zainab Brumberg. You could just go. Oh, sorry.
Zainab Bromberg, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the Marine Biology Club that I was enrolled in last year. So during the semester, I was enrolled in Marine Biology Club. I experienced several enlightening lessons and explorations. Nearly every week, my clubmates and I, we would walk over to Brooklyn Bridge Park, where we were given lessons and lectures on the history and purpose of it. And in addition, we conversed about the park's ecosystems and learned all about its efforts to promote awareness about recycling and keeping New York cleaner. So we created the homemade plankton toes that were shown in a picture a couple slides earlier, which we used to collect specimen from the water at the park, and then we tested our samples at the St. Francis lab. In addition, we got to seine for organisms in the water and take a sailing trip across the East River. And I'm truly lucky that we were able to experience and learn so much. In addition to the physical resources I was given by this program, such as the microscopes and the access to the lab, the knowledge that I was exposed to was knowledge I would never be able to find anywhere else. And by connecting the amazing and incredibly interesting ecosystem of Brooklyn Bridge Park with true scientific knowledge about it through the access to the lab at St. Francis College, my fellow clubmates and I were able to learn about marine biology in a way that we never would have been able to in a normal classroom setting. And mostly, it was something that I looked forward to all week long. Thank you.